My name is Toivo Pilli, and I'm Director of Baptist Studies at IBTS Amsterdam. The study center IBTS used to be in Prague earlier times, but moved to Amsterdam in 2014. And I have been involved with this educational institution for many years. I am also editor of the Journal of European Baptist Studies for some years now. This is very exciting work.
Yes, editing a journal can be both exciting and frustrating depending on when people send their work in for you. That's another story. So how did you first become aware of Anabaptism and Anabaptists? Where was that connection for you?
I grew up in Estonia in Baptist circles during communist years, and we used to have a church leader who was very much interested in church history, including Anabaptists.
Mm-hmm.
And he very often referred to Balthasar Hubmaier.
Really?
And certainly the famous slogan, "The truth is immortal."
Mm-hmm.
It kind of gave guidance and light in the midst of communist oppression to stay firm, to be ready to suffer if necessary.
Mm.
But I must admit that I have later understood that limiting the knowledge of Anabaptists only to Balthasar Hubmaier and Baptist love Hubmaier is kind of too narrow. There is much more to be told. It's much broader story, but I'm very thankful for this beginning and this kind of model that this church leader gave.
So starting with Hubmaier and spreading into a broader understanding of Anabaptism, how do you understand Anabaptism now as a movement or as a term?
There certainly are more than one definitions and more than one approach, but I would say very simply that Anabaptist movement was and is an effort to bring together belief and practice. To practice what you believe, not focusing only on orthodoxy, but also on orthopraxy. And this is one of the contributions that has inspired me in my understanding of Anabaptist and working with these materials and learning more from this movement.
So some people might try and describe that in a single word of discipleship or nachfolger, the following. Would that be reasonable?
I think it is very reasonable because Nachfolge is following Christ and becoming more like Christ and reflecting who Christ is in one's faith, belief, and everyday practice. But certainly for Anabaptist, it was also very important to submit one's life and one's understandings to Christ as model. So Gelassenheit became also very, very important for them. So there is kind of inherent and deep interpretation of what trusting God actually means.
And from where you were growing up, that would be, when you were growing, that would have been a very practical, everyday living out, learning to trust in those situations.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So currently, where is your research taking you? What are you working on?
Well, I work in the field of Baptist studies more nowadays, but I have written some texts focusing on Anabaptist discipleship or piety, and this certainly is very inspiring, very interesting story, including their understanding of what suffering means for a Christian life. And as I said, also from my youth, when I grew up in communist context, this was something that helped to understand the situation and helped to understand how to respond to these oppressive and situations. But yes, discipleship has been something that I have been working on and written regarding Anabaptist story. But I also just finished a short kind of overview text for one publication which will be published in Estonian and in the Estonian language. And I wrote about Anabaptists because this context where I live at the moment in Estonia for a long time was influenced by the understanding that Anabaptists were kind of extreme group. But the story is much more monochrome. The story is much more multicolored. Yes, thank you. It's much more multicolored. It's not monochrome. So I have tried to put into this text also some of these understandings and some of these approaches.
So as a Baptist speaking to potentially other Baptists, what is it out of the Anabaptist story that you think would help us as Baptists to develop, or what would contribute to us, helping us to think better?
I think it broadens our view of believers' church, pre-church, radical reformation, whatever terminology we use. And also our own story, our Baptist story, becomes wider, because Anabaptists are part of the movement that sometimes has been called small b Baptists. The wider movement of believers Baptist approach in church history and also in the present day. So I think that this is one of the contributions that is very important. For myself, learning more about Anabaptists has brought into my focus also the Sermon on the Mount. When I used to be in Prague, then certainly the visits by Glenn Stassen and his interpretation of the Sermon on the Mount that has been influenced by Anabaptists and Anabaptist basic interpretation. It was very, very inspiring. So some of the topics that I probably myself would never probe so deeply without learning more about Anabaptists are still there, thanks to this encounter.
Yes, and individuals and their contribution to us can be quite long-lasting. Little things that get said somewhere, niggle away until we find time to scratch at that itch, as it were. Very Australian colloquialism. Sorry, I better stop that. So why should Baptists commemorate 500 years since those first baptisms in Zurich, or rebaptisms?
I would say there are two reasons. There probably are much more, but for me there are two reasons. One is that from the point of view of church history, the Radical Reformation, as George Winston Williams has coined the terminology or the term, has proved to be much more important and more influential through centuries than church historians and theologians used to think. And especially recently, during the last half a century, there is very, very interesting research emerging that has become meaningful, not only for Anabaptist circles, but also for many others, including Baptists and many, many others who have found there is a dialogue partner. But I think for Baptists, there is another thing that I would like to mention, and this is, it is good to remind ourselves that we are not alone, that the family we belong is much larger, much wider. So this is another thing that I think Baptists should remember when we celebrate 500 years of Anabaptist beginnings.
Well, I hope that we'll be able to see you in Brisbane in 2025, where we'll be trying to mark that with some form of celebration. It's a bit further than a 2.5-hour flight from Tallinn down to Amsterdam, but I hope we'll see you down under, as it were. So I'm wondering, given that your role is in IBTS in Amsterdam, are there any courses or things that you run for people that link Baptist and Anabaptist studies together?
At the moment, we do not have special courses. There is a plan to celebrate Anabaptist 500 years anniversary with a conference in 2025, and our good colleague in Dutch Baptist Seminary, Toivo van der Leer, is planning also to have a Believers Church conference. And there is a plan to publish a special issue of the Journal of European Baptist Studies in 2025 that will celebrate 500 years of Anabaptists.
That'll keep us all very busy getting ready for that, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, as well as everything else that you do, writing more articles for different things. One of the questions I've asked people is about introductory reading resources or other reading resources for more advanced students. Off the top of your head, are there any really introductory sources that you would recommend?
I would recommend books written by Stuart Murray Williams. For example, here, The Naked Anabaptist, I think, is a good introduction. Or a book written by Arnold Snyder, Following in the Footsteps of Christ, focusing on Anabaptist spirituality. There certainly are books focusing on history. But for more advanced students, I would wholeheartedly recommend the recently published T&T Clark Handbook of Anabaptism, edited by Brian Brewer. I think it is really reflecting the present day research. There are different topics. It is kind of 600 pages, but it is worth reading.
That's why it's an advanced book. Yes. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for your time, and trust that you'll have some space to do some more research for yourself and writing. And we look forward to seeing you hopefully in Brisbane in 2025.
Thank you.